You are sitting at your kitchen table, and it is a scene of quiet comfort. The meal was delicious, but 30 minutes later, a heavy, unyielding fog begins to roll in. Your eyelids grow weighted, your focus softens, and you feel an overwhelming urge to succumb to the couch. You tell yourself it's just a food coma, a natural tax for a full belly at 70 years old. You are wrong. That heavy drowsiness is not relaxation. It is a silent, systemic emergency. It is the invisible sign that your internal machinery is screaming. Under the weight of a glucose flood your body can no longer drain. We often believe that health is destroyed by a single, catastrophic event. But in my 45 years of practice, I saw the truth. Your health vanishes through decades of small, quiet neglects. Every time you pick up your fork, you are using a tool that is either repairing your architecture or acting as a weapon of destruction against your own vascular walls. Most seniors I treated weren't truly sick in the beginning. They were simply being chronically overspiked, meal after meal, until the battery of their functional reserve finally went dark. This leads us to the retirement tragedy I have witnessed too many times. Men and women who worked 40 years to build a nest egg, only to spend every penny of that wealth trying to buy back the health that was stolen by their own dinner plates. There's a specific 2-minute habit involving a simple biological shield that can stop this decay. But to understand why you need it, you must understand the carnage happening inside your vessels right now. Hello, and welcome back to the Senior Health Doctor. In today's video, we will cover how the order of your food prevents silent blood sugar spikes. Before we start, if you enjoy our content, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. I'd also love to hear from you. Drop a comment below telling me your age and which city or country you are watching from. To understand the crisis of the post-meal spike, we must look at the mechanical error of modern eating. When you consume a refined carbohydrate, a piece of white bread, a spoonful of white rice, or a sugary dessert on an empty stomach, you are initiating a high-velocity impact. Without any barrier, these starches are hit by salivary and pancreatic amylase, breaking them down into simple glucose molecules almost instantly. This glucose doesn't just enter your bloodstream, it surges into it like a flash flood hitting a narrow canyon. In a younger body, the pancreas is a responsive, high-pressure pump, ready to deploy insulin to usher that sugar into the muscles. But as we age, we encounter the first stage of the chain of decay, cellular stress. Your cells, tired from decades of processing, begin to turn a deaf ear to insulin's knock. This is insulin resistance. The sugar stays in the blood, and the concentration begins to rise to toxic levels. This is where the chemical environment of your body turns hostile. As the glucose concentration lingers in your plasma, it initiates a process called glycation. Think of it as a slow, internal caramelization. The sugar molecules begin to stick to the proteins in your blood and the lining of your vessels, creating advanced glycation end products. This isn't just a metaphor. It is a physical thickening of the blood. Your circulatory system, which should be as fluid as a mountain stream, becomes more like a slow-moving sludge. This creates a massive inflammatory response. Your immune system detects these sugar-coated proteins as foreign invaders, releasing a cascade of cytokines that attack your own vessel walls. Remember, the absence of pain is not health. You cannot feel your blood turning into syrup, but your microvessels can. As this inflammatory storm persists, we move into the third stage, perfusion compromise. Your smallest blood vessels, the capillaries that feed your eyes, your kidneys, and the nerves in your feet, are only one cell thick. When the blood becomes viscous and the vessel walls become inflamed and swollen, the oxygen delivery to your most distant tissues is choked off. This is ischemia. It is a slow suffocation at the microscopic level. The nerves, which are the most oxygen-hungry tissues in your body, are the first to suffer. They require a constant, delicate flow of blood to maintain their electrical charge. When that flow is restricted by the debris of a sugar spike, the nerve endings begin to wither. This is the mechanical root of that tingling and numbness that so many dismiss as old age. It is not age, is the structural collapse of your peripheral nervous system. Over time, this repeated cycle leads to a total functional failure of your metabolic drain. Think of your muscles as the primary reservoir for blood sugar, the sugar vacuum of the body. However, as we age, we often lose muscle mass, a condition known as sarcopenia. If your muscle reservoir has shrunk to half its size, but you are still pouring the same amount of glucose into your system, the reservoir overflows immediately. The glucose has nowhere to go. It backs up into the liver, where it is converted into fat, leading to a fatty liver that further complicates your insulin response. It is a closed loop of destruction. The pancreas tries to compensate by pumping out even more insulin, but high insulin levels themselves are inflammatory, damaging the kidneys and stiffening the arteries. This is how a simple choice at lunch becomes a tragedy of neuropathy and vascular disease 10 years later. Your body is whispering to you through that post-meal fatigue. But if you don't change the sequence of your fork, it will eventually have to scream. The tragedy is that this entire chain of decay can be interrupted by understanding that it is not just what you eat, but when it hits your bloodstream. If you provide the body with a gelatinous mesh before the sugar arrives, you change the physics of digestion entirely. You prevent the flash flood. But to truly see how this plays out in the real world, I want to tell you about a patient of mine named George, who thought he was doing everything right until his body finally began to scream. George was a man of discipline, or so he believed. At 72, he prided himself on having a stomach of iron. He worked his garden, he walked his dog, and he ate what he considered a traditional, hearty diet. But George was living in the shadow of the invisible sign. Every afternoon, like clockwork, George would experience a profound dip in his cognitive clarity. He called it his afternoon haze. He would sit in his armchair to read the paper and find that the words blurred, not because of his eyes, but because his brain felt as though it were wrapped in wet wool. He would eventually fall into a heavy, unrefreshing sleep, waking up with a dry mouth and a strange, metallic tang on his tongue. He didn't realize that each of these naps was actually a recovery period for a brain struggling against a massive neuroinflammatory spike. Then came the night the whispering stopped and the screaming began. George was getting out of bed when he realized he couldn't feel the texture of the hardwood floor beneath his left foot. It felt as though he were walking on a thick layer of cotton batting. When he looked down, his foot appeared normal, but the connection was severed. This was the structural collapse I warned him about, the point where the microvessels feeding his nerves had finally occluded, leaving the nerve fibers to starve in a desert of excess glucose. In my office, George looked at me with the eyes of a man who realized his retirement wealth couldn't buy back the conduction velocity of a dying sciatic nerve. He was a victim of the clogged drain syndrome. He had lost enough muscle mass over the years that his body could no longer dispose of the sugar from his healthy morning oatmeal and evening potatoes. To save George from the full weight of the retirement tragedy, we had to implement the biological shield, a protocol designed to transform his digestive tract from a high-speed transit zone into a controlled release system. This is the one habit that most ignore because it seems too simple to be clinical. It begins with the 2-minute vinegar and fiber trick. Before a single morsel of starch touches your tongue, you must introduce an acidic buffer and a structural mesh. We had George start his meals with 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar diluted in a large glass of water, followed immediately by a plate of fibrous greens, broccoli, kale, or a simple spinach salad. The mechanism here is pure fluid dynamics. The acetic acid in the vinegar temporarily deactivates a portion of the alpha amylase enzymes in your saliva and stomach, slowing the breakdown of starches. Meanwhile, the raw fiber enters the small intestine and begins to hydrate, forming a thick, gelatinous lattice against the intestinal walls. This is the shield. When you finally eat your carbohydrates later in the meal, the glucose molecules don't hit your bloodstream all at once. They get trapped in this fibrous web, trickling into your system at a rate your aging pancreas can actually manage. You are effectively turning a flash flood into a manageable irrigation drip. The second step of the protocol addresses the clogged drain of the muscles. I told George that he had to stop being a passive observer of his digestion. For a senior, the 10 minutes following a meal are the most critical of the entire day. This is the window of the sugar vacuum. We implemented a mandatory 10-minute window of light, rhythmic movement specifically focusing on the soleus muscle in the calves or a gentle walk around the block. This isn't exercise in the traditional sense. It is a mechanical intervention. By contracting the large muscles of the lower body, you trigger the glut for receptors to migrate to the surface of your muscle cells. These receptors act like tiny doors that swing open to suck glucose out of the blood. And they do so without requiring a massive surge of insulin. George had to learn the hierarchy of the plate: fiber first, protein and healthy fats second, and starches, the danger zone, dead last. By the time he reached his potatoes or his bread, his stomach was already partially full. His enzymes were dampened by the vinegar, and his intestinal shield was in place. The glucose spike that used to hit 100 milligrams DL was now peaking at a modest 130. The afternoon haze vanished. The wool was lifted from his brain. We were effectively preserving his functional reserve, one meal at a time. But even with these changes, George had the same questions that keep many of you awake at night, wondering if the damage already done to your nerves and your heart can ever truly be reversed. In my clinic, as patients like George began to see the fog lift, the questions would inevitably pour out, questions born of a late-onset fear that they had waited too long. The first objection I often heard was about the permanence of the damage. "Dr. Arthur, if I've spent 20 years spiking my blood sugar, aren't my vessels already scarred beyond repair?" The answer lies in the incredible, yet finite, plasticity of your vascular endothelium. While you cannot undo a decade of caramelization overnight, you can stop the active erosion. When you flatten your glucose curve, you halt the production of the inflammatory cytokines that keep your vessels in a state of constant swelling. You allow the microcirculation to breathe again. We are not talking about a total reversal to the state of a 20-year-old, but about reclaiming the functional reserve you have left. If you stop the fire now, the structure can still stand for decades. The second objection usually concerned the dawn phenomenon, that frustrating reality, where you wake up with high blood sugar despite not eating for 10 hours. Many feel defeated by this, thinking their body is failing them even in their sleep. But this is simply your liver dumping emergency fuel because it perceives a state of stress. By implementing the one habit during your final meal of the day, and specifically by avoiding late-night starches that interfere with your circadian rhythm, you signal to your liver that the crisis is over. You are training your body to stop the frantic, midnight production of glucose. It is a slow recalibration, a steady hand on the metabolic tiller. Finally, people ask about the all-or-nothing trap. They believe that if they cannot go for a mile-long walk after every meal, the effort is wasted. This is a dangerous fallacy. Your muscles are a sugar vacuum, whether you are walking on a treadmill or simply performing seated soleus presses while watching the evening news. The goal is the contraction, the mechanical activation of the glut for transporters. Even 60 seconds of movement is better than the sedentary stagnation that allows sugar to pool in your extremities. Do not let the pursuit of perfection become the enemy of your survival. However, I must be direct with you, as I was with every patient who walked through my door. This information is for your education and to empower your choices. It is not a replacement for the specialized care of your physician. If you are already managing diagnosed diseases, if you are navigating the complexities of pregnancy, or if you are using medications like insulin that require precise timing, you must consult your healthcare professional before making these changes. Rapid shifts in your glucose response can alter how your medications work, and safety must always be your North Star. Furthermore, if you experience fruity breath, sudden extreme thirst, or a level of fatigue that feels like a heavy weight on your chest, seek medical evaluation immediately. These are not whispers, they are red flags of a system in crisis. We live in a world that profits from your convenience and pays for it with your longevity. Every refined carbohydrate you eat in isolation is a withdrawal from your functional reserve, a battery that does not easily recharge at 70. You have spent your life building a legacy, a home, and a family. Do not let a simple lack of sequence at the dinner table turn your golden years into a series of clinical appointments and lost mobility. The chain of decay is relentless, but it is not inevitable. You have the tool in your hand every time you pick up your fork. You can choose to create a shield, or you can choose to continue the erosion. The body whispers for a long time before it finally screams, and by the time the scream arrives, the price of silence is often too high to pay. Don't wait to lose your health to realize its value.